So today we're talking about the pre-registration required admissions assessment. So this is for the ESAT, the LNAT, and the TMUA. I'm called Tess Bottomley. I'm the school liaison officer at Magdalene College in Cambridge. Now, these admissions tests are not just for Magdalene College, they're for every college at Cambridge University. So the same information will be applicable no matter whether you apply to Magdalene or to other colleges. My role is in access and outreach. Magdalene will run many other webinars this year. You may have also signed up for the interview webinars that are running in November. So, why do we use admissions assessments? As you probably know, competition for a place at Cambridge is incredibly high, and most of our applicants have fantastic academic records. You yourself probably have really great GCSEs and have predicted very good A-level results. And therefore, admissions assessments allow us to assess a candidate's skills for their chosen course and their subject-specific knowledge. Now, these admissions tests are not there to catch you out. They're not supposed to be like a way to trick you. They're more about your aptitude for the course at Cambridge. And therefore, the skills that we test in the admissions test are going to be slightly different to your A-level knowledge. It's often more about how you think rather than about the content that you know. And how do we use admissions assessments? So we take into consideration many things when we look at your application to Cambridge, and one of them is your admissions assessment, but they are not seen in isolation. We look at your academic record, so that's your GCSEs, your predicted A-levels, or possibly if you already have some A-levels or your ASs, we take those into consideration. We look at your personal statement, and then we also look at your teacher reference. This is not as applicable to STEM subjects, but for some subjects, we do look at written work as well. The admissions assessment also plays a part, and we look at this all holistically. We don't just see each one in isolation. There is usually not a pass mark for an assessment. It's rather we look at the score and then we look at the other parts of your application, and we get the whole picture of the applicant. So the first one that I'm going to talk about today is the LNAT, the Law National Aptitude Test. Now, this must be taken before the 15th of October at an approved testing centre. You can book on this link here, and if you have not already booked, I recommend you do that as soon as the webinar is over. This does cost £75, but there are bursaries available, and access arrangements are also available if this is something that you are eligible for example, in your A-levels. The LNAT consists of two parts, Section A and Section B. Multiple choice is the first section, and it's 95 minutes, and then Section B is 40 minutes. I should stress that the LNAT is not about the law. It is not about your knowledge of the law, and we don't expect any kind of prior knowledge. It's more an aptitude test, and therefore it tests things like your critical thinking skills and how you can write an argument, really. So many universities use the LNAT. It's not just for Cambridge, and you only have to take the test once. If you apply to other universities that need the LNAT, your score will be sent to them individually. Section 1 is multiple choice. It's 95 minutes for 42 multiple choice questions. This means you actually have quite a lot of time per question. It's not about rushing through the test. It gives you around 2 minutes to spend on each question. Therefore, when you read the 12 argumentative passages, we really want you to engage with it and to read the nuances in the argumentative passage and, what kind of language are they using. Therefore, it's testing your reading comprehension. Section 2 is only 40 minutes long, and this is an essay. It'll be in response to one of three questions. You choose which one you want to answer, and they are marked at Cambridge. It's testing your ability to construct an argument and reach a conclusion. We're not testing your prior knowledge. It's more about how you make a point and how you argue it. So the advice for section 1, to carefully read the passage before attempting the questions. Like I said before, notice the nuances in the language commonly used in section 1 questions. Are you confident, for example, on the meaning of stated rather than inferred or implied? Some of the questions might be, did the author state this or did they imply it? And you have to see the nuances between those words. So you answer the choices closely to differentiate fact from opinion. Don't panic if you don't know the meaning of a word. Try and make an educated guess based on the reading of the rest of the passage. You can use practice papers on the LNAT website to try and get the gist of this. You'll be able to see lots of passages that have, really similar questions that are going to come up this year. And this will also help you practice the pace of the questions. Like I said, 42 questions in 95 minutes equals more than 2 minutes per question. Therefore, you should not just rush through it. You should actually, really carefully read the passage and try and find where they stress things as fact or opinion. There is also on Magdalene's website a pre-recorded specialized LNAT webinar led by a law professor at Magdalene, Neil Jones, and he talks you through the LNAT in a lot more detail, and I would recommend referring to that as part of your revision for the LNAT. He goes into detail about how it's marked and also some potential questions that could come up and his own advice, because he marks the LNAT and he uses that to admit people to Cambridge. So it's a really good webinar if you're thinking of applying to law. Section 2, advice, is to pick the most suitable question for you, ideally the one that allows you to draw on your own existing knowledge. This will allow you to develop a more substantiated argument. If you don't have much knowledge on the topic, try and explain the assumptions you are making. You can use the introduction to say this. You can say, for this essay, I'm taking this to mean this, or I will use this as an example. Consider your structure, taking into account the time restriction. You only have 40 minutes, so you're not going to be writing a very long passage. We expect about 500 to 600 words. So you're thinking an introduction, an argument for, argument against, and a conclusion. So intro, conclusion, and maybe 3 bulkier paragraphs in the middle. Remember to make quite a balanced discussion, considering multiple points of view. I think having a bit of a nuanced argument rather than just taking quite a strong argumentative point is quite a good technique. Practice writing essays on unfamiliar topics. This helps you focus on planning and structuring an essay rather than getting caught in the details of your subject knowledge. This is going to be quite different from maybe your A levels if you take something like English and history, where it's quite content specific. Instead, this is something more general. You can maybe use newspaper articles or just things that are in the news at the moment to try and make arguments and write essays for that. Again, please refer to the pre-recorded LNAT webinar, because Neil also gives a lot of examples of essays and what he's looking for when he's grading the essays. And try to think creatively. What the implications of your argument? Is the question itself flawed? Now, if this seems quite daunting, you don't have to question the question itself. That is something that's, but if you think the question is maybe a bit tricky, maybe a bit flawed, you can also question the question. That's quite a clever way to go about answering the LNAT. Now, Neil also explains how it is marked at Cambridge, the LNAT essay. He says that you get 2 essays and they compare them against each other to say which one is better and which one is worse, and then grade those against another. And in that way, it becomes a ranked system. So there is not a pass mark or a certain grade that you're trying to get. It's more they use all the different essays and compare them against one another. I should also say on section 1, another part of Neil's advice was that to answer every single question, even if you run out of time, you're not marked down for any of the LNAT, and it is multiple choice section 1. So if you run out of time, just tick random ones because you might get them right. You don't leave any blank. You're not penalized for wrong answers. So now we move on to the ESAT, the Engineering and Science Admissions Test. This must be taken on the 15th or the 16th of October for students wanting to study chemical engineering and biotechnology, engineering, natural sciences, or vet med. This must be taken at Pearson Test Centre. You probably know this as the driving theory test centre. There are many around, and there is a 75p bursary, again, £75 fee with a bursary available. This consists of individual multiple choice modules lasting 40 minutes each. You'll complete 3 of the 5 modules back to back on the day of the test, and therefore the total test time is 120 minutes. The results for the ESAT are reported on a scale that runs from 1 to 9, with scores being reported to 1 decimal place. Results will be sent out to the applicants around 6 weeks after the date of the test. So we're looking at around Christmas time, but the date is not confirmed. The results will be sent to you. and the universities will get them before. Therefore, they will play a part in giving you an interview. So although you won't have them yet, we will have them, and that informs who is invited to interview. So which modules will you take? If you're applying to chemical engineering, biotechnology, natural science, or veterinary medicine, you'll complete Maths 1 and 2 additional multiple choice modules from this list of biology, chemistry, physics, and Maths 2. If you're applying to engineering, though, you will have to complete Maths 1 and then physics and Maths 2, so you don't get a choice. There is no pass mark. You're not aiming for 100%, but rather you're just trying to get as many questions answered as you can accurately in the time given. Like I said, it's not like your A levels. These are going to be quite different and they're going to be quite tricky, so don't expect to get 100%. For further information on the ESAT and practice material, you can have a look at the ESAT website and also the Cambridge University page, and the link is there if you'd like to take a photo of the QR code. I'd also recommend checking out past ENGA test papers and the ASAA, because these are old Cambridge admissions tests. Although we don't use those anymore, the questions are really similar. So if you run out of test papers to do, I'd recommend going straight to those because it's going to test your knowledge in a really similar way. And when you're choosing the additional ones out of biology, chemistry, physics, and maths for the topics at the top, I'd play to your strengths, or the ones that you do for A level, or the ones relevant to your course. So the ESAT advice: revise your GCSEs and your A levels as much as you can. When faced with a question in the test, try to think what topic it's referring to. This will help make quite an unfamiliar question seem familiar. For example, is it a ratio question? Is this mechanics? Where have I seen something similar before? If you can try and link it to your A-level knowledge, that will really help you try and see what it's referring to. Read through the ESAT content specification available on the ESAT website. Every question will relate to one of these topics in some way. The questions are not ordered by difficulty. The easier questions, or those that suit your interests or your expertise, may be near the end. I know that a lot of GCSE and A-level papers often start with easier questions and they get harder. That's not the case of the ESAT. So just because you're struggling midway through doesn't mean you shouldn't persevere, because there may be a question that is perfect for you at the very end. You don't lose marks for incorrect answers, so attempt every single one, even if you're unsure. Use free online resources such as Isaac Physics and I Want to Study Engineering. These are both websites. They have a lot of problem-solving questions that are similar in format to the ESAT. They also might come up at interview, so you're killing two birds with one stone if you use these websites to revise. I'd also recommend, if you do pass questions and pass papers, focus on time management. Don't spend all your time on one question. See, when you do pass exam papers, how can you order it? How can you structure your time? Do you need to take a break in the middle, for example, just to like clear your head because it's quite a long test? So yeah, that's a really good reason to do a mock paper yourself. So the test of mathematics for university admissions, the TMUA, is the final one that we're going to cover today. This also must be taken on the 16th or the 17th of October for students who wish to study computer science or economics. Again, this is taken at a Pearson Test Centre, and there is a £75 fee and bursaries available. This one lasts 2 hours and 30 minutes, consisting of 2 papers at 75 minutes each. Each paper consists of 20 multiple choice questions. The results are again reported on a scale that runs from 1 to 9, and just like the ESAT, the results are sent to applicants around 6 weeks after you take the test, but the universities get them first. And again, this test will inform who is invited to interview, but it is not the only thing that the college uses to choose who is invited to interview. So further information on the TMUA. It's about the application of mathematical knowledge, that's paper 1, and mathematical reasoning is paper 2. So the first part assesses your ability to apply your knowledge of maths in new situations, and the second part assesses your ability to deal with mathematical reasoning and simple ideas from elementary logic. You'll not be able to use a calculator. And the same test, just like the LNAT, will get sent to other universities that you're applying for. You do not need to do the test several times. For example, if you're applying to Imperial, LSE, Durham, and Warwick, the same applies. There is no pass mark, and you're not aiming for 100% again. Just try and get as many questions correctly answered as possible. And you can see the website for more preparation materials like past papers and their worked out answers. The university also has a page dedicated to the TMUA, which will have some resources on there. And again, feel free to take a picture of the QR code. So, how to revise for it? Or again, revise your GCSE and A-level maths knowledge. When faced with questions in the exam, try to consider again what topic it's referring to. If it looks unfamiliar, it's probably still related to something you have done in class. It's just you can't really make that link. So try and figure out if it's a ratio question, if it's mechanics. That should make it a lot simpler for you. Just think, where have I seen it before? And again, you're not marked down. So even if it's not the correct answer, try and take that route and make it look familiar to yourself. Read through the TMUA content spec available on the website. Every question will relate to one of these topics in some way. And again, the questions are not ordered by difficulty. The easy questions may be at the end. You don't lose marks for incorrect questions, so just have a go at as many as possible. And if it gets too tricky, you can stop and move on to the next one. Again, use free online resources such as Isaac Physics and Enrich. Like I said before, these are also used at interview. It's a really good method to revise for your interview. And it's a great way of testing how you think rather than just what the content is that you know from your A levels. This is the kind of thing that Cambridge are really interested in. It's about how you think and how you approach a question as opposed to just what you already know. And again, focus on time management. Don't spend all your time on one tricky question. If you do mock papers, that will really help you learn how to manage your time. I will say for computer science, as well as doing the TMUA, if you are applying to computer science at either Trinity College or Peterhouse College, you will also have to sit the computer science aptitudes test. This is not an alternative test, it is an additional test. You'll only need to sit this if you're invited for interview at one of these colleges. And the college will organise this for you. Unlike the other tests that we've discussed today, this one you do not need to register for yourself. The college will organise it. And again, this shouldn't put you off applying. If you have your heart absolutely set on Trinity or Peterhouse, I wouldn't let this additional test put you off. This test is about, again, how you think. As it says here, it allows you to choose the questions you want to answer, and it rewards your reasoning, and it doesn't mark you down for any mistakes. So I wouldn't let it put you off if you want to apply to one of those colleges, but just bear in mind you will have another test to do. And there's the CSAT website for more information and practice material here. So if you want to take a photo of the QR code as well, you can. So some final advice. Don't expect to get every single question right. This applies to all of the tests. They're designed to be really challenging. Focus instead on what you can do in the time permitted. There's not going to be similar to your A levels. They're going to be more about how you think, like I said. So just familiarize yourself with how the test is laid out. Do some practice tests, and you'll understand that you won't get every single one right, but it's more about how you approach the question than it is about the knowledge you already have. And don't panic if you don't think you performed well. It's just one part of the application process. Like I said, your personal statement, your reference, contextual data, and the interview are all considered. And also, I must say, you don't know how these are marked by Cambridge, especially things like the LNAT and the essay. Just because you think you haven't done well doesn't mean that you actually didn't do well. We may be looking for something very different than what you think is a good answer. So I wouldn't get too upset if you walk out of the exam and you think you haven't done well, because you actually might have done incredibly well, but you just can't recognize that because what we are looking for is different to what you recognize as being like a good answer. I would say as well, although I've talked a lot about revising and doing practice papers, we all know that you are A-level students, a lot of you may have mocks coming up, and therefore your admissions test is not the priority at the moment. If you have pressing A-level, course things like that, revise as much as you feel you can do, and until you feel comfortable enough to sit this exam. We want you to revise so that when you go into the exam, that you don't feel stressed, you don't panic, but you are familiar with the exam format and you feel confident. If you go in confident, chances are you'll perform better in the exam, just because you're not going to be flapping and panicked. So do a few tests and do a few mocks, because then you get used to the format and you feel confident, but don't waste hours and hours of time practicing for the admissions test, because like I said, this is just one part of the application and there's a lot other things that Cambridge consider. So yeah, it's just about familiarity. It's not about getting every single one right and absolutely nailing it like you might do with your A levels. So I'm going to allow about 5 minutes just so that people can write their questions in the Q&A. If you need to go get a glass of water and come back in 5 minutes, and then we'll start answering the questions. Thank you.